Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, October 15, 2020 session in our series on digital transformation in traditional and new industries in Asia. I'm Richard Dasher. I direct the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center at Stanford, which produces this series. And we want to recognize the financial support of our 21 member companies in the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center Industry Affiliates Program, which is why we can put this program on. Today, I'm excited that we are going to talk about educational industries in Asia and how digital technologies are changing what's happening in the educational industry setting. For today's session, I have a special treat, and that is our specialist on topics like educational technologies. Kimberly Williams is going to moderate the session. Kimberly has been working with us for 1 year as the Assistant Director of the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center. She moderated a great panel for us on women in Japanese business back in January, and she comes to us immediately from industry experience as a project manager at Cisco Systems, and before that as a manager with Jazz Pharmaceuticals. But before that, for 10 years, she was with the Stanford Graduate School of Business, where she rose up through the ranks to be associate director of the Center for Global Business and the Economy. So I'm very happy to turn the microphone over to Kimberly today. I'll still be here. I'll be watching the situation. If you have questions during this formal session, which lasts until 5:50 this afternoon, please write them in chat, and we'll make sure that Kimberly addresses them and gets them to the members of our panel. For now, I'm very happy to turn the mic over to Kimberly. Thanks for taking charge today.
My pleasure. So I'd like to echo Dr. Dasher's welcome and introduce our topic and our esteemed guest speakers who joined us today. So digital transformation in new and traditional industries is where we have decided to focus the series this fall. And education is very traditional, and yet it's also one where ongoing research and technology can redefine learning. It can also address issues of representation, equality, skill building, and retraining for new careers. So, education and healthcare are often held up as a silver bullet that could transform not only an industry, but human civilization around the world. And obviously, I'm very passionate about this, which is why I speak with very soaring thoughts about this. So today we're going to delve into education, which has seen shifts that have been significantly accelerated due to COVID-19. And there are tremendous business opportunities. These opportunities are tied to potentially shifting the educational systems that are already in place in different countries around the world to one of customization, inclusivity, and broad access that transcends socioeconomic status. However, the flip side of these innovative platforms is often tempered by a digital divide that prevents learners from accessing transformative technologies and can exacerbate the educational gaps already present in current systems. The future of education is very much being rewritten right now. And we have two leading thinkers and practitioners with us today who are wonderful examples of innovation in the ed tech industry. So first off, I'm so glad to welcome Ms. Vu Van back to the farm. Vu is a graduate of the Stanford Graduate School of Business and a graduate of the Stanford Graduate School of Education. Originally from Vietnam, Vu is a female entrepreneur and the co-founder and CEO of Silicon Valley-based ELSA, an English pronunciation app. She worked with leading speech scientists, machine learning scientists, and linguists from around the world to create ELSA, powered by the company's proprietary AI and speech recognition technology. Prior to founding ELSA, Vu lived and worked in Vietnam, Singapore, and Denmark, where she experienced firsthand the challenge of being an English language learner abroad. She also served as an engagement manager at Booz & Company, one of the top 4 global management consulting firms. Our next guest is Young-Jun Jang, and he's co-founder and CEO of Riiid, a leading AI-driven ed tech startup based in Korea. At Riiid, YJ manages corporate direction and overall strategy, leading investor communications to share the firm's vision and business strategy. Riiid has developed a state-of-the-art, deep learning AI technology solution that delivers an advanced and individually modified learning experience that aims to democratize and equalize educational opportunity. Earlier this year, Riiid launched Riiid Labs. It's global arm based in Silicon Valley, and they're looking to expand into business, new educational domains and geographical markets, including the US, South Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. YJ also serves as a director of the Artificial Intelligence Industry Association in Korea, and he graduated from the Haas School of Business at the University of California, Berkeley. But we are very glad to have him with us today at Stanford. So both of our speakers will provide a short presentation, and then we'll open the session up, as Dr. Dasher mentioned, to questions from the audience, which I will moderate. So please feel free to type questions in the chat feature as we go along and as thoughts come to you, and we'll be sure to bring them up once the formal remarks have concluded. So without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to Ms. Bhuvan for her remarks.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Such a wonderful opportunity to be virtually back to the farm and get to meet with a lot of people here and sharing some of the things that I have been seeing as well as working in the last few years after leaving Stanford, and share more about the journey that how I use technology in effecting changes in education, which is a huge area that I'm super passionate about. As Kimberly mentioned, very quickly, I was born and raised in Vietnam and had the lucky journey to be here at Stanford about 11 years ago, and since then had been going out doing some of the things before I got back to education, which is a big part of why I came to Stanford for. And today I want to share more about what I see as a digital technology in education businesses, which is what we are actively working on at my company, ELSA, which is at the very high level, an AI that uses voice recognition technology to help language learners around the world improve their English pronunciation. But maybe before I got there, let me share my personal story and why I came up with this idea and why this became the journey that I, together with my colleagues, had been working on for the last 4.5 years or so. Personally, I was born and raised in Vietnam. I moved here about 11 years ago. And you know, like a lot of us who grew up outside of the English-speaking countries, English is very important part of your education journey growing up. You don't have to convince me twice why English is important, because it has direct impact on your opportunities, your income, your job prospect, your ability to travel and make friends around the world. And so just like a lot of our friends growing up in the rest of the world, I spent so much time and money learning English growing up, right? Like 20 plus years. I probably got very high test score in a lot of places, and I can read really well, I can write really well. I probably know more English grammar than an average Americans here. No offense, but just because that's how I spent 20 years learning English, right? But the biggest challenges I found was that when I started moving abroad in Denmark, but particularly here at Stanford, was that people had a really hard time understanding my English at the beginning. You know, multiple times, everybody at Stanford know that all of that fear and that insecurity when you get to this institution, how come everybody around you being so smart and here you are, why you've been here? But adding on top of all of that is communication challenges, right? When you are in a group, when you're in a classroom and you spoke and people had a hard time understanding you, they might ask you to repeat a few times. You might decide to try it again, or at a certain point you just gave up, and it kind of hurt your confidence. And that was what I felt personally in my first quarter at Stanford, right? Like, you know, MBA classroom is sort of cutthroat. Nobody cares about your grades, so it doesn't really matter how good you are in your grading. But everybody cares about what you had to say in the classroom, and that's how they think about how smart you are. And multiple times I would be in classroom, let's say with Richard as a professor, and he would be like, "Woo, thank you for your contribution." He moved to somebody else. And then somebody else saying almost the same thing. And then it's like, wow, that's such a good idea. Everybody jumped in. And multiple times I was sitting there thinking, I said the exact same thing 5 minutes ago. How come I didn't get that same attention? And it happened often enough. You know, a lot of things come to your mind, right? Are you coming from Asia? Are you because you're female? Because you're too small? Whatever that is. But what ended up happening when I got the feedback was that people had a really hard time understanding me. And so I worked really hard in improving that communication challenges, because I didn't want that to be the hinder for my ability to pursue whatever I want to pursue in a new environment. And so, but what I realized is that in that journey, I'm not alone, right? Like there are more than 1.5 billion English learners around the world. Collectively, we are willing to spend a lot of money in learning English. And yet, in that majority of the solutions is still focusing on traditional skill set, which is grammar, writing, reading, just because it's easier to teach in the classroom where you have a teacher and 20 students or 10 students or 15 students. You can teach them a rule in grammar and then they all can learn and remember it. But to teach speaking, and especially when it comes to pronunciation, is extremely hard to do at scale. But it has huge impact on one's communication. And you know, salary impact, definitely, right? Like there's a lot of statistics out there. 40% is on average global higher salary if you speak really good English. But in certain countries, like where I came from Vietnam, you could easily earn twice as much with the same skill set if you speak really good English, right? It's unfair, but you know, in Vietnam, now that I speak better English, people might think that I'm smarter than other people just because I speak English more fluently. That has no truth to that, but it's just how the world is perceiving you. And so English is really important. But the other thing that was mind-blowing for me when I was doing all of this research was that actually you are being perceived as less trustworthy when you speak English with a really strong accent. Now, you can say that accent is who you are, is being your authentic, is your identity, and yes, that's all true. But when it came to hinder your ability to speak and communicate fluently, people might think that your ideas are not equally good just because of your way of conveying that, right? And so, and then there's a lot of impacts on companies as well. So seeing that challenges on my personal side, as well as seeing how big the challenges are at the world level, together with my CTO and co-founder back in late 2015, beginning 2016, we tag team and we want to build a voice recognition technology that can help language learners around the world improve this very important skill set. The reason why we came up with this idea, why voice recognition technology, was that when I was looking for a solution to improve my pronunciation and speaking, everybody told me just watch Netflix and YouTube. You're just gonna figure it out. Now it's true, it's better than doing nothing. But the other research that shows is that, you know, after 8 years old, your human ears won't be able to hear the differences in different sounds anymore. So meaning that I could watch Netflix hearing you speaking perfect English, but whether I can mimic that and reproduce that or not, that's not clear. Some people will have that capability and some might not. That might be the reason why if you were to learn an Asian language like Chinese, right, as an American, Chinese is a tonal language and you have different tones and you can hear me saying ma, 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 ma. That's 4 different words. But a lot of people, they thought that I just said the same thing 4 times because they just couldn't recognize that. So you flip that. If I learn English, you might see that, oh my God, that mistake that you made was so obvious. Why can't you hear me saying it? But actually my ears don't recognize it at all. And so the only solution that I found back then was that I could learn with a speaking coach. These are linguistic experts. They will be having a one-on-one session with you. They will be listening to everything you say and giving you feedback very clearly. Good, you said it too fast, you don't emphasize on the right place, you don't vary and intonate the right thing. You might mispronounce that certain sounds, and to do it correctly, you have to move your tongue and your lips in different position so that you can improve those mistakes. So that was a transformative experience that I got to go through. The only challenge of that was that it's extremely expensive. They charge about $200-300 an hour. Anything that come to an expert is expensive, right? So that was giving me and my co-founder the idea, if we can replicate that experience and democratize that so that we can bring that same experience to 1 billion people around the world without having to pay $200-300 an hour, that would be very powerful. And the only way for you to do it is using technology, right? There's nothing else that you can use human teachers to be able to reach that scale. And it was also the year where voice recognition technology became more popular with Alexa, Google, Siri at the end of 2015. With deep learning, now it's becoming more advanced and more accurate. So I was an avid user of Siri for a long time just to see how smart they are as they hear my voice more. And so one time they gave me the idea, if I can turn the Siri into something more meaningful, if they can listen to me speak English and identify the mistakes that I made, and now play that role as a voice, as a speech therapist for me, that would be wonderful. And so that's how ELSA came about. ELSA stands for English Language Speaking Assistant. So it's a virtual assistant that we are aiming for. It's not the Disney Frozen ELSA. If you all have kids and might be familiar with that, right? But our vision is to really enable this 1+ billion people learning English around the world to speak English really confidently, fluently, and in that effort, hoping that we can help open new opportunities in their lives and their careers for them. And so very quickly on the journey, the first 2 years, what we then started doing was we built this artificial intelligence. We don't use Google API, we don't use Alexa, we don't use Siri, for the reason that these technologies have certain limitations, because they would understand native speakers much better, but they would not understand non-native speakers as well, especially for those who speak really bad English. And the population that we want to serve are people who speak really bad English, right? And so we spent the first 2 years building our entire AI from scratch. We collected data from people who speak bad English around the world so that we can improve that. Once we get some good technology going, then we launch a product to look for that product market fit. By beginning of 2018, started acquiring users. And then from then on, it's all about acquiring users and growing our user base, and then started expanding our business to a different model as we are right now in 2020. I won't play this video demo. Let me play a quick demo so that you can see how it works. But here's just an example of actually a mistakes that I personally made. Information shift. When you hear a person saying something wrong, and then the machine will highlight that.
E sound, try to spread your lips and slightly lengthen the vowel. Sheet.
So now you know what you did wrong.
Information
sheet. You can hear it again and you can try it again. Information sheet. So that's how the AI works, right? It's just gonna highlight to you. Now it's just a very simple example. We can do a lot, just basically anything in the universe, but that's the technology that does. And that's the reason why we are able to do it, is because we build this voice recognition technology. As I mentioned, we probably have the largest data set of people who speak bad English around the world. So we actually understand language learners much more accurate than other technology like the Google and Amazon of the world. Now, if you as a Native American speaking to Google, we will not understand you as well as Google. But if you are very bad, like, I don't know, Japanese, Vietnamese person speaking bad English, we will have a better chance of understanding you because our AI has been trained with your data for a long time. Right. And the way how it works is that you come to the app, we have this AI, we teach you all different skill set in English. We give you an assessment at the beginning, which is real time. You get that feedback right away. After that, we use our recommendation engine to say, hey, for you, we're generating a personalized learning path that fits with who you are, what are the challenges that you face, as well as what are your interests, right? You could be here wanting to look for a better job. You could be here because you want to travel the world. You could be here because you want to watch movies. So then we combine all of the input that we know about you, what challenges you have in your speaking, what are your interests, who you are in your journey. We then send you a very personalized learning path so that you can improve your English very fast. At the end, we aggregate and give you what we call an ELSA score, which is a speaking score. This is actually something that we had been working internally for the last 4 years and only recently can launch this one. The reason is English has a lot of standardized test score out there. But when it comes to speaking, especially like your intelligibility, right? Do people understand you? It has always been very subjective, meaning that teachers can listen to you and say, oh, that's perfect. Oh, that's not good enough. But there's no way that people can tell you if you're bad, how bad it is and how much you are improving. So we take all of this different information, how you pronounce every sound, how you stress in different syllables, how do you intonate your sentence, how fluent you are so that it sounds natural, and then put together a very quantified score that you can then keep track of it. Your score could be moving from 60% to 80%. You know that where you are in that journey of your speaking. So this is probably one of the first time that we actually launched to the industry a score that can accurately measure your speaking and your intelligibility of your speech. We do see our students improve significantly, usually after 3 months, right? Like that's a low-hanging fruit. People definitely feel they are much more confident. They improve their pronunciation because now teachers telling them that, hey, I seem to understand you better. And then they feel like they can speak a lot more clearly, which is what we're aiming for as part of the efficacy results that we set out for the company. I think I mentioned this already, which is a quick journey of where we are. I think the last 2 years or so in COVID enabling it, we have been growing extremely fast. We currently have about 11 million registered users from 100 different countries. And on a yearly basis, we have been growing about 3 to 5x so far. Asia is still the biggest market for us because we launched in Asia first, and that's where we understand the market best. And we're in the process of expanding that journey into different parts of in different parts of the world. We also started in 2020 expanding our offering to selling to schools and companies. We have been approached by teachers that say, hey, we can teach the students in different skill sets, but we need help in the speaking. And so that's what we have been working with schools and companies and giving them the mobile application, but also a dashboard where the teachers can keep track of all of the students, can integrate their own content, right? Like the teachers have their own curriculum, they can integrate that onto ELSA platform so that all the students can learn the same thing as they learn in the classroom, but now they can go home and practice speaking without the teacher's involvement. So we have worked with schools around the world, right? At Rice University right here, Fulbright University in Vietnam, GNSU in India, K-12 school from Ukraine. This is actually came in through COVID. We work with like hundreds of teachers in a very remote school in Ukraine where we actually allowed them to learn speaking English in that few months that they had to learn from home. And that's our effort to really adopt these technologies into language teaching and learning. And we believe it's important, right? We have this Industrial Revolution 4.0 here where we, I think Richard probably had a slide somewhere when I saw in the very early of the seminar, right? Like you talk about where we are going to and where we are right now. Artificial intelligence is definitely the core backbone of it. We have blockchain and DLT and all of that as well. So it's here and it's allow and enable for the adoption of this technology in education business. But with that, it also influences how we have to rethink about education, right? Employment trends is here. Jobs that are available now might not be available in the future anymore. We're gonna have new types of jobs that emerge that we don't even know what that is yet, right? Like, and then in the middle we have the tech trends, right? Fast, super fast. Every year, startups like ours coming up with crazy things that require institution, education, teachers, and students to learn about new skills and knowledge. What you learned last year, you don't know now, right? Like just through COVID, you have to learn all teaching to Zoom. God knows what happens in 6 months from now. So a lot of changes that happen that requires educational institution to change. And then student behaviors, right? They came from digital immigrants, now digital natives, right? They require everything to be instant. The fact that you're gonna grade my exam and then wait for another week to get that score back doesn't seem as relevant anymore because everything they do in their life seems to be real time and they can adapt it right away. And so I think with that, digital technology will change the core of how we teach and learn as we move forward from what we see, right? Like in the learning industry, all of the new skill sets that will have to be cultivated through teaching. And for that, learning has to be changed as well. It has to be more personalized, right? Everybody got to learn on their own pace. It has to be inclusive and accessible to everybody around the world. Language learning and teaching and speaking doesn't have to be available to those who have $200 an hour anymore, right? Like now everybody around the world can have that access. It has to be collaborative. As we build ELSA, everybody talks about, hey, I can learn on my own, but it's boring, it's sad. I don't know what else is doing. Can I learn with other people, right? So that collaborative learning is becoming very, very important. And it's a lifelong learning. It's not about learn for an exams anymore. It's about learn and see what they can use to apply in whatever jobs that they have, right? And so those are the things that I see is definitely not just changing what we think about education, but it's going to go back to the core fundamental of how teaching and learning is. And here are some of the changes that I think is going to happen right away in the education system, right? Like open source education, knowledge sharing platform is going to be here to stay. Virtual reality robotics is going to be here, whether you like it or not. You got to adopt it at some point. Gamification, a big lecture might not work anymore, right? Students have very short time span and attention, and so you got to break it down into something very accessible, very intuitive. When we teach English, example for ELSA, it's like a game for them. Every lesson is like 2 minutes or less. Anything longer than that will drop. Like we do a lot of testing. We say, if we try to extend the conversation even beyond 2 minutes, we got half of the people drop out. And I'm like, you can't even hold a more than 2 minutes conversation in real life anymore. That's just how sad it is, but that's just how people are operating. And then AI virtual tutor, right? Like that can adapt to students' strengths and weaknesses that need to be there. And so we at our company actively working on the last two. The first two, we leave it up to other people, but we're actively working on the last two to bring about those changes in language learning and teaching. And I think this goes way beyond language learning. I think it's going to touch every single aspect of education as I see it. So I'll stop there. Just join us if you want to redefine education, adopting technology and digital enablements to every part of the education aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Vu. That was remarkable. I will say before we even get into questions, when you did the demo, there was quite a response in the chat with a lot of people being pretty impressed with how that works. So thank you for your thoughts. I do want to shift over and have YJ also present his slides.
It's a great honor for me to have this opportunity to present Riiid to the Stanford community here. I'm YJ Jang. I'm a founder and CEO of Riiid. It's a startup specializing in deep learning and education technology. Originally, we are originally based in Korea, and we've been trying to fastly expand our business and technology models into global markets and global educational industries. Let me start with a short video clip that I prepared that's gonna showcase one of the products that we are bringing to the world. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video clip. Actually, a lot of people make fun of the music, the background music, but then that music was the music that I could, that music was the best music and cheapest music that I could get for the video clip. So hope you guys understand it. That video was about one of the products that I published. I launched back in 2016. It was an AI tutor for TOEIC. I'm pretty sure that you guys are not familiar with what TOEIC is, but I'm gonna get to the details shortly. And this is a little bit about me. I graduated from Cal, class of 2012. And I just can't help but mentioning the last full format in 2019. We did the back. After barely graduating from Haas, I co-founded a webcomic platform called Tapas Media. A business degree and webcomics platform may not seem to link with AI tech, but while at Berkeley, I usually hung out with computer science PhD students at Cal, and I came across the concept of machine learning and deep learning, which I became really obsessed with. I was so certain that that's the next paradigm, following the paradigm that has evolved from the internet to mobile, and try to find the right industry or business to adapt this technology. So if you take a look at the slide, in the internet and mobile revolution, game and adult content industry are always the early adopters for new technology and attracted enormous amount of traffic and money. And now following that, every single industry has experienced a tectonic shift from desktop online to mobile online. This has had a massive impact on our daily lives, but not on education. So, I found out that education is always the most conservative industry that's always reluctant to change. So I instantly realized there must be huge opportunities right there. And I also realized that if we can implement 100% personalized learning based on data, I became really confident that the mobile transformation of education industry will also be irresistible if we can give consumers a clear, real value. And leading the new era, we have known for millennia that the best education is delivered one-to-one by an experienced educator. But because that model can't scale, we settled long ago for classroom-based instruction. Educators focus the little time they have for giving personal attention on the best and the brightest, or the bottom of the class. The broad middle was left out to fend for themselves. So, I realized that, I thought, AI-enabled education solves that age-old problem. AI-enabled teaching can give everyone individualized attention. One-on-one teaching can scale. I have always believed that this will enable true mobile transition that truly meets the needs of each learner. And since I'm a Korean, as a first trial, Korean education market was a perfect fit for me. South Korea's zeal for education and its students' desires to get into a prestigious university and then get a well-paid job is one of the highest in the world. People are willing to pay for effective learning tools in Korea. Simultaneously, Korea has remained #1 worldwide in smartphone ownership and internet penetration. 95% of the population has his or her own smartphone, and 96% of the population use the internet even in 2013. So it is also known for having one of the fastest internet networks around the world. I was thinking of introducing the world's first AI tutor solution, and I needed to test and prove its marketability. Korea was the perfect market to go. That's what I thought. And we started humble. So I started on AI at that company back in 2014 with the best engineer and UI designer that I knew. First and foremost, we needed data in order for me to implement and launch real AI tutor. So I try to purchase data from existing companies, players in the education market in Korea. As there are a number of long-established players in the industry, I thought, I really thought it would be easy to get massive data, but really surprisingly, there was not a single company or institution that had data, like meaningful data that explains how its contents are consumed by learners. But in effect, all they had were just contents, not data. So we were forced to collect data ourselves, but it couldn't be random. It needed to be standardized so that it can scale and enable rapid business expansion. Moreover, we wanted to collect large amounts of data in a short time frame. So based on all these factors, we zeroed in on the TOEIC test market. I'm pretty sure you guys are not familiar with what TOEIC is. TOEIC is an English proficiency test for students or college students or job seekers to take in order for them to get a job in mostly in Japan and Korea, and like almost 2 million Koreans, like mostly in 20s to early 30s, take a TOEIC exam. Traditionally, most test takers enroll in offline, prep courses to get high scores. The tuition is typically about $240 US or more. Paying for hours spent commuting, uniform curriculum, and the overall ineffectiveness have been major points of complaints about these programs and exams. I simply knew that we can do better. So we finally launched our free pilot app in 2016 to collect initial user response data. With the collected data set, we developed an AI model to predict answer premise and to suggest learning paths by partnering with KAIST, Korea's equivalent of MIT, for example. Basically, the initial AI model that we developed was to predict whether you're gonna get the next questions right or wrong. On top of that, which choice you're gonna pick with almost 90% accuracy. And in late 2017, we officially launched our Sana TOEIC app with AI models and premium plans. 2018, the app became the #1 grossing education app in both Google Play and iOS app stores. And we started growing really fast. Even now, 150K students are actively using the app each month. So the world has been skeptical about whether people can change their rigid habits of studying with textbooks and pencils, but it turns out that people can actually solve over 980 questions on average on our app. So 980 questions is a lot, actually. It's actually equivalent to the number of questions in about 2 textbooks, 2 workbooks. Personalized curricula and super convenience overruled long-standing and persistent learning habit. That's what we found out of the data, out of the numbers that we could get from the mobile app. There's another video that I want you to share with you. That was just an example that we are quickly adapting the newest technology. So Kakao is one of the IT conglomerates that launched their own AI speaker, and we've been partnering to develop this AI speaking personalized learning system that I just showed you through the video clip. We are fundamentally R&D company. Actually, we started as R&D company, not as a service company. So we've been pretty successful in the market, but Riiid's DNA is tech and R&D, not just task prep. So I'm actually proud to say that Riiid team of over 60 plus top researchers and machine learning engineers from Stanford, MIT, UC Berkeley, CMU, University of Michigan, KAIST, and others are researching and developing state-of-the-art technology in knowledge tracing. Our own answer correctness and score prediction model boasts the highest accuracy level amongst existing AI models. We are one of the few firms that has developed and applied question recommendation algorithm by directly modeling learning effect maximization. And we developed a deep learning model that predicts the user's dropout probability, which can be used to boost performance and really motivate the students and offer personalized motivation. On top of that, undoubtedly, AI ad today is just starting, and it requires a diverse yet practical approach to truly derive real-world impact. Acquiring top-tier research, top-tier research talent, and focusing on outstanding services that attract massive user traffic. Riiid is a leader at top-tier AI conferences and provides the world's first real-world case studies, quantifying diverse aspects of learning efficacy. Based on these activities, Riiid is establishing the AI tech standard for the industry with multi-layered patents registration as well. And we also, do something that's gonna make a huge impact on the society as well. Early this year, Riiid unveiled the largest publicly available education data set in the world called EdNet. We also launched an algorithm challenge called AI Ad Challenge via Kaggle to use the largest educational data set to build innovative algorithms that track knowledge states of 280K plus students. The goal is to track the best and the top AI talent from all over the world to the field of education. If successful, we will achieve open collaboration between AI and education experts, and the world may be closer to achieving the grand goal of having any student with an internet connection enjoy the benefits of personalized learning experience, regardless of where they live. The 100K prize competition is from October 5th to January 2021, and the winning models will have the chance to present their ideas, their models to AAAI 2021, and it's going to be a great privilege to students who got who won the competition. So, and as I'm pretty sure at Stanford, AAAI is really popular. Most of you as some of you may already know, AAAI is one of the most prestigious AI conferences, and Riiid has the honor of hosting the workshop on AI and education at the 35th AAA conference, and honor usually deserved for the likes of the Microsoft and Facebook. I think we're the first early stage startup company to be a host. So it was the whole team is really proud of the fact that we are hosting this conference. And our fundamental tech focused on real world impacts has been successful, making us profitable. Basically, the core of Riiid's business model is the firm's modularized AI engine, which is scalable. It embeds answer correctness, score prediction, session dropout models, aligned backend systems, or even UX UI modules to any system or program. And this technical backbone applies to potentially every education domain from TOEIC, SAT, SAT, and realtors exam, even for employee training program for corporations. And with all of these exciting progresses, we've successfully more than doubled the firm's value year over year since our establishment. Last July, we also closed pre-Series D round of funding, which amounts to about 42 million USD. Currently, we are negotiating with some of the institutional, some of the VCs, that are located in Japan and in California and Singapore for the next funding round. And I'm truly honored to work with the best talents. Motivated by the firm's rapid growth, global top talents from diverse backgrounds are actually flocking into Riiid. Now, I don't mean to brag, but I can proudly say, Riiid attracts the world-class AI R&D talents, as well as the great talents from education background. Recently, with the industry's best technology, top talents, impactful partnerships, Riiid is now tackling one of the greatest issues in education. Anyone here who's been interested in education might have heard of summative versus formative assessment. Summative assessment aims to evaluate student learning at the end of the instructional period. For example, standardized tests like SAT, ACT, GMAT, GRE, etc. are summative assessments, but formative assessment is much more user-friendly and offers a user-optimized learning experience through constant diagnosis and feedback, ultimately leading students to reach their own personalized learning goals. Now, for the longest time, there have been active discussions and debates whether formative assessment is the better approach to unleash each student's potential. Until the advent of AI, the industry has been unable to correctly implement formative learning. Formative assessment is a critical part of assessing student learning in real time. Constant and regular assessment and optimization. This has been a nearly impossible task in the traditional education sector, as a single teacher can never constantly optimize individual learning experience of many students. Online learning tools like Google Classroom alone are insufficient to support formative learning. This can only be this can only be delivered with the aid of AI technology, one-on-one learning at scale. Formative assessment powered by cutting-edge AI tech can provide a variety of formative tools to help students and their parents understand the status quo of the learners. It can also help educators determine if their students are progressing and in the right way. And we've been expanding our business into diverse nations and sectors. Today, we are working on creating formative learning support solutions to the education industry. And we're helping students achieve learning objectives through continuous low stakes, low stress evaluation and feedback on their performance throughout the entire learning process rather than condoning cramming. And we are partnering with global leaders in the education field to achieve this goal. Where, for example, we recently signed a deal with Kaplan to develop AI tutors, leveraging each other's strengths. AI tech for Riiid and content and global brand for Kaplan. So yeah, this is the end of the presentation that I prepared. Thank you guys for listening.
So I should say kamsahamnida. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your remarks. That is impressive technology, and obviously you you and your team have been quite busy. So I know at the very end you were talking about kind of, you know, some of the B2B piece, but we were wondering if YJ, yourself, and Vu, if you could kind of talk a little bit about kind of planning to license out your technologies, how you kind of see those partnerships, and kind of, you know, in general, what's the importance in kind of the future as you take both of these technologies and platforms forward.
So we should also briefly introduce, David, you were on the sheet that YJ showed, but you're the CEO of Riiid Labs here in the US, but calling in from Korea this morning.
Professor Dasher, that's correct. Riiid Labs is, I mean, you add the word labs to Riiid, and that's us, Riiid Labs. And Kimberly, thank you for that question, because that's exactly what Riiid Labs does. Our entire purpose and sole mission is, we're located on the East Bay, because property on West Bay is a little too much. Even. What we do is we integrate our technology into other school districts, publishers, institutions, and the vision that we had, and YJ, because remember, he's articulated the fact that we're an R&D company, and Santa TOEIC, Santa SAT, Santa Realtor just happens to be just case models and studies that have been extremely successful. However, we think really as an AI company, it behooves us to open our technology, our data, and really share it with the community out there. And some of it is licensed for profit. And the reason we have a huge push on equity as well. So our Chief Equity of Learning Officer, Jim Larimore, he's helping us actually identify the right partnerships where we can actually, beyond profit, right, make more of a global impact with we call it Santa Inside for the moment, but our AI technology to be able to integrate it inside other people's learning programs.
That's great. Thank you so much. Vu, same question.
Yes, thank you, Kimberly. David, you really touched. I love your mission and the way how you go, because that's what we at ELSA is sort of, we very much similar. We're a research-driven organization. I think we started with a mission that we want to solve this, but then we went back to research and figure out what we can do, and have been busy building our technology for the product that we're serving, because we believe there's a lot of people that need that. But I think we're now getting to the point that we're ready to open up our API again. You know, there are we have been receiving a lot of that, but our team being too small, and so we haven't really opened up our API. But, you know, as I mentioned, there's a lot of solutions out there that want to deal with a population that don't speak good English, and we have an ability to potentially understand them better, and it's time for us to open that up so that hopefully we can make the experience for people a little less frustrating. So we're working on that API model right now. I think it depends on where we are. It's a combination of things, as David mentioned. That's why I love your answer. You basically said what I needed to say. It's a bit of a licensing model for business, but it's also figured out what else we can do that make a bigger impact, leveraging this amazing amount of data that we had from people who speak really different English. When we started out, I actually really went on the street to collect this data on my own, because there's nobody else doing it. And if you want to go to a data collection company, they would charge you, I don't know, $200,000 for 5 hours of data, which is nothing, right? Like, it's good for a research paper, but it's nothing when it comes to practical implication. And so now that we had the luxury of collecting so much of this data over the years with people around the world, there's something that we can do to open that up for other people. So we're on that process of doing that. Hopefully in 2021 is the year that we can open it up.
Thank you. And Vu, you just gave me the perfect segue, because my other follow-up question for both companies is really about data. Both of you talked about there wasn't a data set that existed before you kind of got into the space. You really had to create and collect that data on your own. So talk a little bit more maybe about how data plays a role in your future plans. What other gaps are there, and how do you maybe intend to either address that gap or potentially partner to get the data sets that you need for for the future applications for this technology. And Vu, you can go ahead and take that one first.
Yeah, no, I think data is always a question for any AI company. It doesn't really matter what, right? Because at the end of the day, and David, Young-Jun, you guys are more technical people, you can correct me, but algorithm is there. A lot of people with enough time will figure it out, but for your AI to work better is the data that becomes the assets, the data that make it better or worse, right? And so I don't think there's a data collection company at all that can do just about anything you want. I think depends on what you need for your AI. You will eventually own that data, and that's then become your assets for your company on its own. I think selling data on the AI part is also not as common because it's privacy and it's also becoming your secret sauce of the company, right? So for us, and I don't think it's that easy, and that's why, let's say for us, right? When other people say, hey, how do you differentiate yourself? What if another company want to do it? I think the good thing when you start into AI is that even if you have $100 million, data don't come overnight, right? You still have to get that time in the process and train the data. So anybody that collect data long enough in the time will be becoming very, very important. For us, for example, we want to launch an ELSA beyond teaching English. And I think there's some question in there, like what kind of accent we're teaching. We only teach American English. If we want to teach British English, we have to go out and collect data again because British English and American English are very different, right? There's not that many data out there. And the data that we need is not just the British English data. It has to be the data of people who speak bad British English, right? So it's the two sides of the data that makes it very, very hard. Now, we want to teach Spanish. We're not one of the apps that can just easily add in 20 languages at the same time because we need data to train this AI. We first need like real good people speaking good Spanish, but we also need data of people who speak bad Spanish. And so just thinking of that process, it takes a long time. I wish there's a company out there that's selling it that data and we can just like scale it fast, right? But now, unfortunately, there's not, but that's also probably give us the differentiation that we have that nobody else has. So I'll leave it as that. Would love to hear what David and YJ has to say on this as well.
Vu, that's awesome. I feel your pains. we should chat offline about this over coffee and things. I think two things I'd like to add and add color to what Vu says. I think we're comrades in arms here. I think when we approach a lot of companies, whether they be education companies, publishers, can you hear me well, by the way?
Yes,
okay.
Perfect.
Publishers, schools, MOEs. What we learn is that, well, first off, content. Do they have the content? And usually they do. It's when we get to the data, we kind of scratch our heads, right? Because unfortunately, depending on what they're trying to achieve, we need a lot of it or just a little bit, and then it starts dynamically. Our AI starts dynamically gathering and getting smarter. So at that point, it's good. But what we are discovering, and I'm sure Vu can sympathize with this or empathize with it, is, at least to my second point, it's crazy just how clunch they are with their data. They don't want to share it. And it's kind of stupid, actually. I'm sorry. Because education, I mean, think about finance and medicine. AI scientists flock to those industries. You know why? Because there's a repository of data that people have come to understand we need to share to make things more efficient. But in education, in the name of privacy, people are not sharing the data. And that's because they've gotten smart through Facebook and whatnot, that data is worth money. But at the end of the day, healthcare is as privacy driven as education. There's a way to share that data by redacting the privacy issue. So it's just an excuse. That's my opinion. And that's why the EndNet Challenge, we're so proud of it. We're trying to lead by example there. We're trying to show the world it's okay to share your data. Learning companies, come on, let's do it together. Meaning more like schools, actually, the public schools and the private schools, is you're going to benefit your students more. Ultimately, we're all going to get to the goal sooner and better and faster if we are more collaborative. So that's the thing about data, is it's poop if you just keep it closed. You have to open it for it to become gold and oil, right? Yeah.
And then I just wanted to.
David, you couldn't say better. When I started this company, again, I'm a non-tech person coming in. I'm like, why is that everybody holding the data so near to their heart? That it's so hard to get in. And I had to literally go out and collect data on my own, which is crazy, right? Like how many people out there had been speaking English wrong for the last 20 years or like, I don't know, 100 years. And how is that not possible that we can get it out earlier than later? But I love what you say.
YJ, you wanted to add something?
So the types of data that we, as a company, have been developing is, the data where, whether you're gonna get the next questions right or wrong, or what choice you pick and how long it takes, et cetera, right? And we've been, I think it is a good idea for Riiid and Vu to launch their own B2C product so that we can collect our own data, instead of being dependent on other institutions, or other government agencies. So and that's one of the things that I want you to talk about. Having a B2C product is really important for AI company, because that's the first channel to collect data. And the second part is we've been trying to be positioned as AI company, rather than education company, because once we position ourselves as an AI company, we realize that so many education companies and government agencies that are desperate to for AI technology, because AI technology is not future technology anymore. It's a technology that they really need. They're desperate to get for now. So those government agencies and education companies are like more than willing to provide their data to AI companies to get the real result. So that's the second part that I want you to add up.
No, I think that's a great distinction. And honestly, yeah, all of you are like preaching to the choir. I'm just like, yes, of course. The way education kind of gets, I don't know, pigeonholed is sometimes quite unfair. So question about, so obviously, and again, in both of your presentations, you both mentioned how quickly things are changing, how rapidly technology is coming on board, and new applications and new technologies. So how are you kind of thinking about keeping up with kind of the rapid advance in AI?
Just that's a great question. How do you keep up with it? I mean, that's it's like asking somebody like, how are you going to keep strong and young and brilliant into the future?
And you have those answers too, right?
Right. Yeah. No, but I think we can all agree that it really comes up down to a few things. Is we need to be vigilant, right? We need to be humble, because AI, who knows what direction this is going to go. And here's a funny thing about how AI is developing. It's an odd tension between advancement and you're dealing with a market that's scared, right? You have to enlighten everyone about AI. On the one hand, you get a bunch of people who react to AI with cheers and laughters, and they're like, wow, the future is here. And then on the other hand, you get, you're looked at as a devil. So when it comes to the advancement of AI, how do you keep in touch is carefully, vigilantly, delicately, humbly. I think especially in the field of education, we have to be gentle yet bold, right? And so how we're specifically at our company is that we're realizing that you can't divide AI and the business. So education and business is even an oxymoron in some ways, but you can't keep pursuing that without doing the greater good. You can do good and do well. So how we're doing this AI, how keeping at the edge of it is actually by doing good, literally. I mean, I don't, quite frankly, the only way to keep at the edge of AI is to be accepted by everyone in education so that we can actually, interact with the right data crowd, right? So our strategy so far has been, because we don't have unlimited cash to keep burning, so the best thing we can do is actually approach the people, and be like for the people, by the people, and stay at the cutting edge. That way we're both humble, we're hearing it from the ground, and we're being more accepted by the community. So that's been our, if you will, strategy. Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'd love to get Vu's thoughts.
No, I think definitely David covers a lot of that and what I resonate a lot. But the one thing I just going to add is I think it starts from the core of what the company is about, right? Like if you are here to build a business, AI is an enabler. It might be less important to keep up with the edge, because anybody build AI is no, right? You could be spending 6 months with that scientist and it doesn't work, and they just go away. Like you can't tell the scientist that it has to work, right? You can ask an engineer, say you cannot, you have a bug, you fix it, but you know that it's going to happen. But from AI perspective, they can take for a while and they go down that path and it doesn't work. But that in that process, when it doesn't work, they learn something else, right? And so I think it's the core of the company. Are you willing to invest in this? Because it's going to take a long time. But if you're not, now, AI team might not deliver the business result for this month, for this quarter, but it is the future of this company, because the moment that you stop and everything else moves so fast, very soon you realize that whatever the algorithm and the technology that you do is very falling behind, all of the state of the art and new framework that comes out that you're not adopting, which means that you're not innovating fast enough, right? So I think leaving room for the AI and making it core so that the rest of the business understands why it's important. Let's say for us, we are a product-driven company. Every week we launch new features, but it's not the same for AI team, right? And so the rest of the company has to understand what is the AI team is doing, and how is that plugged into the entire business. I think that's allowing AI to stay on top of it. And I think being humble, you know that whatever you built works 3 months ago might change already. And so you're just going to constantly innovate and make sure that you stay ahead of the curve.
I think those are qualities that the education industry can embrace all over the place. So I also did want to switch gears just a little bit. So, and Vu, I'm kind of hoping that you can lead off with your thoughts on this one. But David, I'd love to get your input. So we talked about, obviously, that there is a digital divide. Obviously, in Korea, there's lots of cell phone penetration, lots of device penetration, and that really helps. But that's not the case in that's not the case in all of the Asian countries, and certainly there's a huge spectrum. And in some of the markets and geographical areas that you are also looking to expand in, that won't be the case. Vu, I think I read that you guys are looking at moving into Japan. And so just talk maybe a little bit about how are you addressing the digital divide, and how do you intend to kind of think about that as you make your plans and move forward?
Yeah, no, I think, we build this technology, as why I said, one of the big things is it has to be inclusion and accessibility to everybody, right? And online learning brings out a lot of benefits, but it also brings out inequality in education for those who have no access. And I don't think this is a challenge that one company alone can solve, right? Like it has to be the entire education sector comes along, and it's not because of COVID. I think this trend of using digital technology is going to be here to stay. How do you close that gap? Because the moment that you move a lot more things online, it's going to create bigger and bigger gaps, right? It used to be that everybody has the same access to teachers. Maybe your teacher is slightly better than mine, but it's not going to make a big difference. Now with technology, one has access to everything that personalized to them and the other person don't. They're going to fall behind a lot more. And so I think it's a big question that me as an educator will always think about it when we were thinking about giving us to access to a lot of people in the remote areas. At our company, we can give ELSA for free, but that means nothing if the person has no devices, right? Like, so I cannot give the devices. So we actually reach out to like Google Chromebook and say, hey, are you going to offer this to people? Because I'm happy to do whatever it takes for my part, but I need other people to play this part too. Otherwise, it can't work. Same for infrastructure and technology and internet connection. We have this product that unfortunately doesn't work well offline. It means that people need to have access to internet. what we have done in certain places, like in Vietnam, where we're very strong, is we work with telcos and we subsidize them so that they give this free data plan for users who use ELSA. Now, we cannot subsidize on the devices itself, but we're working with like, hey, use ELSA and you're going to get this free data plan so that you can have access, because otherwise, yet that's another equity gap that we are creating when people saving that data for something else and they're not using for education that other people will have access to, right? So I think it's a great question, and I wish I have a better answer for it. And I wish somebody's gonna solve it, because we work in India, we work in Vietnam, and other parts of the world that we see this challenges firsthand. And we do what we can, but I think it's still the main challenges. We're trying to move the technology offline, but technology limitation is still there. It doesn't work as well, and so we have to move it back online for that reason. Yeah.
If I may pick, oh, I'm sorry, Kimberly.
No, I said, David, take it away.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, what Vu is doing with ELSA and what we're doing with our AIs, there's overlap, yet there's such a difference. And I think that's why I think we're comrades in arms in so many ways. You highlight such good issues. So right now, there are two populations we're working with that don't have easy internet access. One is in Ghana. We're working with schools there on how to, and they want to do formative learning, with their exams. They want to make it low stress, right? And they want to have their students perform better. But how do you do that when our AIs, is optimized for online broadband? And so we're working with other entities to see if we could make it an offline, online, type of thing where they can work offline, and maybe once a month the teacher can take that like server over to a city where it works and it just live updates. So we're experimenting, but it's in the nascent stages. We haven't figured this out. So Vu's very right. A second population, believe it or not, is the prisons in the United States. They don't have internet, or they cannot. Like, they want to close it off. It's purposely closed off. And so we're like, okay, how do we serve these guys, right, or gals in the prison systems? And so it's really a challenge, and we're figuring it out, because whether we like it or not, the connectivity is an issue. It's an issue, and and besides data, I think that is a one big thing, especially because to deliver AI effectively. But I think we're getting there. And again, I think all of us should be talking more about that together. I mean, we'll get there faster that way.
Thank you. Those are great thoughts. And I do want to say, I specifically in my introduction was talking about learners, not students, because there certainly is, and you've already talked about kind of the other populations that can be served by these sorts of technologies. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because it is about lifelong learning. It is about trying to access all of these different groups and make sure that they can all benefit from these technologies. It looks like we're at 5:50 p.m., Dr. Dasher. So I wanted to ask, are we prepared to close our formal part of the program?
I think we can close the formal part of the program and encourage everybody to stay behind, because there's a lot of questions that we can get to in a more informal way from now. So thanks very much for the session today. For everybody in our audience, next week we'll have Dr. James Peng, who is the founder and CEO of Pony.ai, who's going to talk about autonomous vehicles and how that's transforming transportation. So thanks for everybody. Please stay behind if you can.